You grab the same tray of chicken breast you always buy, and somehow it's a couple of dollars dearer than last month, and the tray feels a little lighter in your hand. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why that keeps happening every time you walk down the poultry aisle at Woolworths or Coles, and how to stop it happening to your trolley. The real question isn't just which supermarket has the cheaper chicken this week, it's whether the chicken in that tray is actually all chicken and whether the price on the ticket is telling you the whole story. If that sounds useful, stick around. Give this a like, drop a comment with the product you want us to check next, and hit subscribe. Let's get into it. The first thing worth knowing is that chicken is one of the easiest things in the whole supermarket to get tricked on, because most of us shop by the sticker price instead of the unit price. That's the smaller number tucked underneath the big price on every shelf at Coles and Woolworths, showing you what you're paying per 100 grams or per kilogram. It looks like a throwaway detail, but it's the only fair way to compare a family pack of thighs against a small tray of breast fillers or a home brand tray against the big brand one next to it. Unit pricing like this is required by law for the big supermarkets under Australia's Unit Pricing Code, which exists for exactly this reason, so shoppers can compare properly instead of guessing. Supermarkets rotate their chicken specials constantly. Breast fillers get the discount 1 week, thighs the next, drumsticks or a whole bird after that, and if you're only glancing at the dollar figure on the ticket, you'll assume every special is roughly the same deal, when a lot of the time it isn't. Divide it out, and some weeks the tray with the smaller price tag works out dearer per kilogram than the one beside it. Pack sizes have also been quietly shifting on a few chicken lines, with the same price now sitting on a tray that's just a touch smaller than it used to be, which is exactly the kind of change that's easy to miss if you're only looking at the number out front. This kind of pricing behavior, discounts and specials that don't always add up the way they look, is part of what the ACCC, Australia's consumer watchdog, has been examining more broadly across the supermarket sector in recent years. The unit price cuts straight through all of it because it doesn't care what the special sticker says, it just tells you the real cost of the chicken, so before anything goes in the trolley, get in the habit of glancing at that per kilogram figure rather than the price on the tag, and use it to compare across cuts, brands, and pack sizes on the day you're shopping, because the cheapest looking tray isn't always the cheapest chicken. Now here's the part almost nobody checks, and it changes the whole conversation about what you're paying for. A good amount of the chicken sold in supermarkets, particularly pieces that have been marinated, tumbled, or packaged specifically for tenderness, has water added to it somewhere in processing. That's a completely legal and common step, and done well it can genuinely help keep the meat moist through cooking. But that extra weight isn't free chicken. It's water, and you're paying the same price per kilogram for it as you are for the meat sitting right next to it in the tray. Food Standards, Australia, New Zealand, the body that sets the rules for what has to appear on food labels around the country, requires that added water be declared once it makes up a meaningful share of the product. Sometimes that shows up as a plain statement on the pack telling you water has been added, and sometimes it only shows up further down, inside the ingredient list itself, where every ingredient has to be listed, in order from most to least. If water shows up near the top of that list, right next to the word chicken, you're effectively paying chicken price for a decent chunk of liquid weight in the tray. Plain fillers and whole cuts with nothing done to them will usually have a short ingredient list, often just the word chicken and nothing else, because there's nothing else in the pack to declare. There's another catch worth flagging. This isn't purely a price issue, because added brine is often carrying extra sodium along with the water, so a plumped up piece of chicken can end up costing you more on both fronts at once, in dollars and in salt. The moment you start seeing marinades, brines, or added flavor mentioned on the front of the pack, that's your cue to turn it over and read the ingredient list properly before you decide which one is the better buy. It only takes a few seconds, and it can be the difference between a good price and a price that only looks good because part of what you're buying isn't chicken at all. Which brings us to the crumbed, marinated, and nugget-shaped end of the chicken aisle, because this is exactly where the price story and the health story start pulling in different directions. You're paying extra here for convenience. Someone else has already done the cutting, the coating, and the flavoring for you, and that labor shows up in the price per kilogram every time compared with a plain filler one shelf over. That's fair enough. Convenience has always had a cost. but flip the pack around and read the nutrition information panel, the table on the back that lists exactly what's in a serving, and you'll usually find these processed pieces carry noticeably more sodium and more saturated fat than the plain chicken beside them, thanks to the crumb, the oil, and the marinade doing the flavoring instead of your own kitchen. One handy habit here: compare the numbers per 100 grams rather than per serving, because serving sizes can be set differently from product to product, and that alone can make one option look better than it really is, next to another. Sodium is the part of ordinary table salt that, eaten in excess over a long period, puts pressure on your blood pressure and your heart, and the Australian dietary guidelines are pretty clear that most of us could do with a bit less of it in our diets overall, chicken included. Without any single product needing to be treated as forbidden. You'll also see the health star rating on the front of these packs, that familiar number of stars out of 5 designed to give you a quick, at-a-glance way to compare similar products against each other on the shelf. It's common enough to see a crumbed or marinated chicken product carrying a lower star rating than the plain fillet right beside it, precisely because of that added sodium and fat working against it. None of this makes crumb chicken a bad food. A schnitzel on a Friday night isn't going to undo anything, and treating any single product as off-limits isn't fair or accurate either. But if you're buying it every single week because it's easy, you're paying twice. Once at the register for the convenience, and once in extra sodium you didn't necessarily plan on eating. The simple fix, if you want to hang on to both the money and keep the salt down, is to buy the plain fillet and season it yourself. It takes maybe 10 extra minutes at the stove, and it costs a fraction of the price of the pre-marinated version right next to it. Then there's the label language: free range, RSPCA Approved, organic, and the premium that comes stapled to almost all of it. These words matter to a lot of shoppers for genuinely good reasons. How an animal was raised is a real and personal choice, and nobody should be talked out of caring about it. But it does pay to know exactly what you're reading before you pay extra for it. A word like free range on its own can mean slightly different things depending on which brand is using it, while a logo like RSPCA Approved or a certified organic mark comes with an actual audited standard behind it. One you can look up yourself if you want to know exactly what it involves. If a particular welfare standard matters to you, that logo tells you far more than the word floating next to it on the front of the pack. Here's the twist most people don't expect though. When it comes to the nutrition panel itself, a free-range breast and a standard breast are going to look almost identical. Similar protein, similar fat, similar kilojoules per serving. You're not paying that premium for a healthier piece of chicken in a nutritional sense. You're paying for how the bird was raised. That's a legitimate thing to spend your money on if it matters to you. Just don't confuse it with a health upgrade, because on the numbers on the back of the pack it usually isn't one. And it works the other way too. A free-range or organic label slapped on a crumbed marinated product doesn't cancel out the sodium and saturated fat in that same product. The welfare claim and the nutrition panel are simply answering two different questions, and it pays to check both rather than letting one do the talking for the other. Last stop on this investigation, and honestly, the one that saves the most money if you're willing to put in a little extra work yourself: fresh versus frozen and whole birds versus pre-cut pieces. Frozen chicken is almost always cheaper per kilogram than fresh in the same fridge section, and freezing doesn't meaningfully change what's inside the meat, the protein, and everything else survives the freezer perfectly well. A whole chicken, cut up and portioned in your own kitchen, is also nearly always cheaper per kilogram than buying that same bird already broken down into fillets, thighs, and drumsticks across separate trays, because once that butchery work is done for you, you're paying for the labor as much as the meat. There's a bonus in it too. Once you've portioned a whole bird yourself, the frame and the bones don't have to go in the bin. They'll make a decent stock, which is about as close to free food as you'll get out of a single trolley item. If your week allows for it, a family-sized frozen pack or a whole bird portioned into meal-sized bags for the freezer will beat almost every pre-cut tray in the fresh section on price, with nothing lost on the health side of the ledger. Just wrap portions properly and use them within a reasonable time once they're in the freezer, so you're not fighting freezer burn later on and undoing the saving. It's a small change in habit, but across a year of grocery shops, it adds up to a meaningful saving on one of the most expensive items in the average trolley. So add all of that up, and the tray that looks cheapest on the shelf isn't always the cheapest thing you can put in your trolley once you look at what's really inside it. And it isn't always the healthiest option either once you flip it over and read the fine print. The real winner in the chicken aisle most weeks at either supermarket is the shopper who checks the price per kilogram instead of the sticker and checks the ingredient list and the nutrition panel instead of trusting the front-of-pack claims on their own. 2 things to take with you on your next shop. First, glance at the unit price before anything goes in the trolley and actually use it to compare, not just glance past it. Second, if you're buying anything other than a plain fillet or a whole bird, turn the pack over and see what's been added. Water, salt, sugar, before you decide it's worth the extra cost. Neither of those takes more than a few seconds once it becomes a habit, and both of them protect your wallet and your health at the same time, which is really the point of watching a video like this one. Next time, we're heading into another aisle to find out whether the big bottle of something you buy every single week is really the deal it looks like on the shelf, so keep an eye out for that one. Until then, shop a little smarter.